It's me, Brianna, and you're listening to Are We Caught Up Yet? Marvel Edition. You can find us on youtube.com/SaveTheGameMedia podcast services. If you want to show us extra love, you can find us on patreon.com/SaveTheGameMedia, all that fun stuff. But today, I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Sam. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Sun is shining.
Really? That seems unusual.
Yeah, very very abnormal over here. Yeah, no, I'm fine, all things considered.
Good,
How are
good.
you?
I'm doing well, all things considered.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on, but you know. What have you been watching? My computer screen while I type.
I have been watching not much. The latest, I've been keeping up to date with Loki,
Mm-hmm.
but
Of course.
besides that, absolutely nothing.
Really?
Yeah,
Nothing. Not
yeah.
even like dumb stuff that you just throw on while getting ready or something?
No, I don't really do that very often. It's normally music as opposed to a TV show or anything.
Mm. My mistake was putting in one of those like little phone holder things in my
Hmm.
shower. And so now I watch TV while I shower.
That's dangerous because you can just spend ages in there, run up water bills.
Luckily, I hate the shower, so I don't spend too long in there. But
Well, as long as you're doing everything you need to in the shower and you're not running up your bills to a ridiculous extent, you do you.
yeah, fair enough. Fair
As long
enough.
as you're responsible.
Fair enough. Um, I was on vacation for 2 weeks, so I surprisingly watched a lot, especially on those long flights. I think the one going to Istanbul was like 13 hours, and then the
Hmm.
one coming back was like 12 because of like the wind and stuff. Um, so those really long flights are very long. And I have to keep myself busy or I will panic because you're just stuck in a metal tube and you can't get out. So
Hmm.
I have to keep myself busy. On the way back, I read 3 books on the flight, but on the way there, I watched, um, what is it called? No One Will Save You. That's what it's called. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's a spooky film on Hulu. And I would highly encourage everybody to watch it, especially if you can handle spooky stuff, and especially if you can go in blind. It was pretty scary, especially on a dark film. I was watching it on Friday the 13th for extra spook factor. Um, and yeah, it was really good. It does a lot of like interesting artistic things as well. Like for example, like the main character, I don't think she says more than like one line the entire film, which
Oh.
is really interesting because the people around her talk, and the actress did a fantastic job where she does a lot of things that you can kind of tell what she's thinking, what she's feeling, stuff like that. And it does like a lot of really good storytelling through other people as well. But yeah, I don't know. Overall, it was a really fantastic movie. So I highly recommend that. I watched Get Out for the first time 2 nights ago.
Ah.
That was pretty good. I recommend that if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen it for some reason. Um, what else? I finished season 9 of Suits, so I'm officially done with Suits. I watched all of season 1 for Lockwood and Co. That was really good if you want something like kind of silly, spooky. That's really good. Let's see. Have I watched anything else? I watched season 1 of Truth Be Told on Apple, and yeah, that's everything.
Mm,
Well, probably everything. But, yeah, so I did watch quite a bit, I think.
very nice.
Yeah. If you watch No One Will Save You, you should let me know because it's bizarre and interesting and really good with all the free time
I
you have.
can't make guarantees, but I just looked up the reviews and stuff, and it seems pretty good. So maybe.
Okay. The other thing that I watched was this movie called Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Oh, segue.
Yeah. Did you see that was a good one? Um, and I thought it was pretty good. It was okay. Decent. What'd you think?
I think that your opinion is, or should I say, was the general consensus
No way. Because I
when
was being sarcastic.
this film came out, that it was okay to good, and as time has gone on, I think more people have reflected on it a bit more positively. I still don't think it's. This is kind of like jumping the gun a little bit, but I think the main criticisms that are levied against these particular Spider-Man films in the MCU is everything in them is great, but there's not really a sense of directorial style or flair, in terms of cinematography and direction. They are, for the most part, pretty cookie cutter. And when you are surrounded by films like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and a few things that we are yet to see, coming up very soon, this one feels more generic in comparison, but that still doesn't mean that the film itself isn't very good, because it is. But I just think, like, I don't know, it's not overly exciting or visually captivating, which I think is part of at least the appeal of these films. So it feels like there's a loss there, but really the substance that remains is still of a high quality.
Okay. Fair enough.
So you were being sarcastic.
I was.
So wait, in which direction?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I am nothing if not a Spider-Man simp at this point for the whole
Mm,
franchise. I've been converted by Into the Spider-Verse and Across the
mm,
Spider-Verse. Um, I have my new little figure. Actually, I didn't buy this. My dad's girlfriend did, but I have a Miguel right here now. And yeah, my cardigan and sweater that I ordered probably 4 months ago finally came in. So
mm.
yeah, living the Spider-Man life right now. If only I would play the game.
If only, some of the best Spider-Man storytelling we ever had. Yeah.
Really? Better than Spider-Verse?
I didn't say better. I said some of the best.
Oh, okay. So not better.
I mean, that's entirely subjective. I
Hmm.
don't think so, but I don't think it's far off.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Well, maybe someday.
Don't lie to yourself. Don't
Do you mean don't lie to you?
don't give. No, it's both of us. You know, you're just trying to implant the idea and give a false sense of hope. It's not going to happen. It's okay. You can admit it.
I mean, there's always a chance. Never say never.
Okay.
What's that? You really think it's a never?
I mean, of all the things that could be a never, I think that that ranks relatively high.
Fair enough.
But,
Fair enough.
you know,
I just don't want to get motion sick.
they have so many accessibility options.
Okay. All right. Going through the list. Oh wait, just to clarify, I did really enjoy this film. Specifically, I thought that they had a really good, a really interesting villain.
Mm-hmm.
He was bland in some ways, but I would say for the most part, the story between him and Spider-Man was really, I think, really interesting. And I was really glad that this wasn't like another throwaway villain. And I didn't see the dad thing coming.
Nobody did.
So yeah. I was definitely shocked Pikachu face. I watched it on my TV,
Mm-hmm.
not on my iPad, and I wasn't crocheting.
Good.
So I paid attention.
Proud.
And I did yell at my cat. I was like, "Oh my god, Luna, it's the dad." She didn't have any reaction, but
She's a cat, so I'm not surprised.
I talk to her a lot like that, and sometimes she does meow back. I'll be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this happened," and she's like, "Meow."
Well, it just means that she saw it coming, you know.
Yeah, she's pretty good at predicting stuff like that. Yeah. So for soundtrack, just because I want to cover it briefly, I would say, I mean, you can obviously hear the Spider-Man theme in there, even though it's not just like flat out like the Spider-Man theme in its like normal cheesiness, but you can still hear it in like a cinematic form. So I definitely recognize that. But overall, I would say that the soundtrack was actually really good. And I kind of got to the point where like I was recognizing the tracks in the film. So I did really enjoy this music. I will say, I think if somebody just out of context randomly played the music for me, I don't think I could pick out the music unless they played like the main theme. Whereas, like, you know, obviously with something like Spider-Verse, if somebody played a track from Spider-Verse, you'd
Sure.
pick it up like immediately. So definitely like a notable, it's notably better than a lot of the soundtracks we've heard thus far.
Yeah.
But still some room for improvement. So yeah. How do you feel about the soundtrack?
No, I think that's pretty spot on. I think that, I mean, I love the Guardians films for the music, all the licensed music that they have, and I do like the original tracks that they do use as motifs. But I think this film does a good job of blending original score and licensed tracks at the right time, interspersed throughout the film. Does that pretty well. Yeah, I mean, you could argue that we've had at this point, I mean, I know you haven't seen them, but like multiple iterations of Spider-Man at this point in film. So there's already kind of like a built-in identity to the kind of music that a Spider-Man film should have. Because whilst there are variances between them all, they are all along the same lines. And I don't mean specifically just incorporating like the typical Spider-Man theme. I just mean the kind of upbeat, bouncy tracks, for the most part. They're relatively consistent, tonally anyway. Whereas any other hero that we've seen thus far, it's been the first time that we've ever seen them depicted on screen. So they've kind of had to What I'm saying is that this Spider-Man has the benefit in terms of tonal setting with its original scoring, the hindsight of other cinematic iterations that have, in and of themselves, iconic tracks. So they can kind of derive some stuff from that rather than building from scratch and trying to create a musical identity for this character from scratch.
Yeah, for sure.
So they get the best of both worlds. They can still very much make it its own thing, but still draw on the lineage that has come before it.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is like at this point, I don't think there's anything that's gonna top like Spider-Gwen's music. So just, you know.
Never say never.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, I don't have much else to say on that. But I thought it was worth touching on, as always. I also want to mention it just because it happened really early on. The Stan Lee, where he's like, "How's your mother?" Thought that was a good one.
Yeah.
Thought that was a really good one. So
Yeah.
it was a fun. Let's see. Okay, we're just gonna go with the more recent format that we've been doing, where we just kind of go where our brains take us, I suppose. He's lost a lot of backpacks.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I feel so bad for him. He's like, my backpack. She's like, that's the fifth one. And I do feel really bad.
Yeah, it's a bit of a running gag with Spider-Man in general. I don't mean it in terms of MCU or anything, but the idea that he leaves behind and forgets a lot of things. For example, in the Spider-Man game, one of the main collectibles is backpacks that he's left around the city and forgotten.
Oh, okay.
So
you just like go find his backpacks?
Yeah, and each of them have like a little bit of lore, tidbity, cool item thing.
That's fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun way to do a collectible.
It is. It is. But goes to show that that kind of thing is relatively universal and believable, really, for the type of person that Peter is, and being a high school / college student, depending on the iteration, and having to often ditch things midway to go and stop a crime or whatever. Those are the kind of real world situations that you don't really see depicted all that much with any other character.
Yeah,
like
that's that is true, because like
if a
Iron Man doesn't just
crime,
stop that stuff.
yeah, if a crime started and you caught wind of it across the city and you are in civilian clothes eating a hot dog or something, like the reality is that for most heroes, unless you can just fly naturally, you would have to switch into your outfit however you do that and make sure all of your stuff is secure, hopefully. And I like that we see that reflected in this film, that not only is it good because he is obviously probably the youngest hero that we've got. I mean, he is the youngest hero that we've got thus far. But also that, I don't know, me saying that the film doesn't have like a directorial sense of style or something, at least that there is those things, character moments that do make Peter feel like a bit of a bumbling idiot.
Yeah,
like this
but I mean,
is
he is a
technically
kid.
still a Spider-Man very early on in his career,
Yeah,
as opposed to other iterations where he's a little bit more experienced. So that's refreshing at the very least.
yeah, I thought it was fun as well. It's nice seeing him, like, I guess not be like super confident Spider-Man. I mean, he is still, that's not fair. He is still super confident, but he fails a lot. So it's like, trial and error and trying to figure things out. And I think that that's fun, especially since we have like everything that we've received. What is happening? Why does my phone keep making noise even though the noise is off? Anyways, even though so we have him, but all of the other heroes I think are like already pretty old. Most of them barely jaded. So yeah, it's nice and refreshing, especially the beginning part where you see his perspective of what happened in the Captain America film.
Yeah.
That was really fun, where he's like, "You guys."
Yeah,
It's fun.
it's again one of those little things that is, for the most part, completely inconsequential, has no real weight or meaning, but it's nice for people that have seen the films through to this point. And again, it's I think it's believable for how they've decided to interpret Peter Parker. Like, he's totally the kind of person that would, I mean, he was in over his head in Civil War anyway when he was introduced, but like if he was in a big superhero fight, which is like his first real big encounter with any of these people, it makes sense that you would probably pull out his phone and be like, "Whoa, look at this. Whoa."
Yeah. Especially like from afar. I feel like if you got close, like you don't want to fangirl too hard.
Yeah.
But
Which is why he puts his phone down when
he
Ant-Man
goes
gets
in.
big. Yeah.
Oh, so good. I loved it. Let's see what else. What do we want to talk about? Okay. Let's just okay. Bechdel test, I don't think it passes.
I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah, I don't think it does. So we'll just get that out of the way. Okay, so story. And characters and all that fun stuff. I was shocked at how little MJ was in the film. And she was very, very background, which I'm okay with, but I did think it was kind of funny because that's the same thing that happens with Zendaya, in Dune.
I mean, she's in Dune far less than she is in
Yeah,
this
that's
film.
true.
But
That's true, but still same
yeah,
kind of
no,
energy.
yeah,
So I was just like, I just thought that was funny.
yeah.
That, that's 2 films now that she's had that role, but
Well, I think it's like this. Well, I don't want to attribute it to just this, but this was like the thing that really has propelled her, which it does for most actors in the MCU. Obviously, sort of propels them into the limelight. So this really was the boost that. Obviously, since then it's been Euphoria and it's been subsequent Marvel appearances and Dune and yada yada yada. But yeah, she wasn't that well known at the time. I certainly didn't know who she was. And not only that, but also again, you don't have the context or at least the experience of having watched the films, but like the Sam Raimi films, the original Spider-Man trilogy, like that was a full-on Peter and MJ story. She featured prominently in those, and while she wasn't in the Amazing Spider-Man films with Andrew Garfield, I think that they still had a romantic dynamic in those films, just with a different character, Gwen Stacy. I think audiences had kind of gotten a little bit stale of it, so they didn't lean into that straight away. Obviously, you can kind of pick up from, particularly towards the end of this film, that there is, even if it's a seemingly antagonistic dynamic between the two of them, there is still at least at this point, kind of camaraderie and mutual. Well, I wouldn't say mutual interest yet, but there is interest has been piqued, I think, even if it's subliminal. So they kind of it's why we didn't see Uncle Ben die in this film, you know, and we never have and never will, because they just don't want to, at least this early on in their depiction of the character, lean into the stereotypical stuff that we've seen at least once or twice before, because it might not have felt like it, but to go from the Raimi films ending into the Amazing Spider-Man films and then the Amazing Spider-Man films ending and going into Civil War, we had gone through 3 different versions of Spider-Man telling the same kind of story in a relatively short period of time, like a decade between the end of one and the start of the third. So it felt like a lot. So I know why they didn't do it in this film, at least.
Yeah. Fair enough. Looking forward to seeing MJ more. Okay. Who else should we talk about? Oh my god, what? I'm blanking on his friend's name.
Ned.
I thought he was a fun character. I thought he added a lot of good moments. I'm curious to see if they keep his character. But
Because
because I feel like I haven't seen him, but I've seen clips from the film before. Like from the other films.
okay.
Not to say that like they took him out, but like I just haven't seen any clips of him. So
Fair.
that's it.
I mean, he's clearly ganky.
Yes.
But it's just that we don't have Miles, so it's like we're just going to give Peter in this universe a version of Ganke.
Yeah. I do like how they like acknowledged a lot of tropes, like the you could be the dude in the chair and stuff like that. It's fun.
Yeah.
It was fun. And just to make sure, because we're talking about like actual names, the main bad guy, that's Vulture, right? Like they didn't call him Vulture, but
yeah.
And then was the other guy like an actual villain that's in the comics? What's his name? Like Shocker or something?
Shocker,
like that?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like a normal dude in there too, I assume.
Yeah. In the comics, he's a Spider-Man villain, yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then, I mean, there was technically another one.
Really?
Yeah. But we just
I mean, you're not talking about Prowler, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, technically, yes, that too. But no, the bald guy with the sort of messed up eye.
Oh, okay.
Tattoos.
From the prison.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who got arrested on the ferry. He is his character is Scorpion.
Oh, okay.
Spoiler alert, we haven't seen him since. But
beautiful.
That's not to say that he's off the board. Like they're still going to make more Spider-Man films, obviously. So
for sure,
he could very easily be like I've waited all this time for my revenge kind of thing. Type of song.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to. Do you know how old Tom Holland was in the first film? Like not in Captain America, in this film, to be clear.
And
do you know by any chance?
By Tom Holland, you mean the actual actor Tom Holland?
Yes, because he was 15, like playing like Spider-Man was 15.
Yeah. Well, this film came out in 2017. He was born in 96. So that's...
he's the same age as me.
4...
You said it came out in 2016,
21, right?
Okay.
That's
3 years. Yes, 21.
Yeah.
It's the same year that I was born, so.
Yeah.
Okay. So playing somebody 6 years younger than him, it's pretty believable.
Mm-hmm.
Surprisingly.
He's got a baby face anyway, so
Yeah, he does. He seems like he's a really fun dude.
yeah.
Okay, let's see. What else do we want to talk about? We talked about MJ. Do you have anything else you wanted to say about Ned?
No, he's all right.
Okay.
I don't
One thing
love
I did.
I don't love the depiction. One, because he is, I don't want to badmouth the guy, but it is like a poor man's Genki. And I would have preferred to have waited for Genki to come along with whenever Miles decides to show up. They could have just made a new character. I mean, technically they did, but it's Genki in all but name. And I don't love the actor. Like, I feel he's kind of one note. Like, he can do one thing, but he doesn't really have a lot of range. But at least in this film, they don't really need him to have all that much range. So it's not like egregious or anything. But I mean, I guess that's technically spoilers. As time goes on, that is maybe more of a glaring issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. What else did I want to talk about? My poor brain. I will say, okay, I'm gonna warn everybody listening, just in case. Very mild, very, very mild spoilers for Across the Spider-Verse, which is the second Spider-Verse film. So we do see Aaron in the Spider-Verse films as Prowler.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. But at this point he's not Prowler, or at least we don't know he's Prowler.
Yes.
Which we can then assume, obviously, that Miles will come along, because he talks about my nephew, which is Miles.
Yeah, I mean, he exists in the world, at least.
Right. So they could take advantage of that, or they could leave it.
Well, I mean, like, deduction. Aaron is buying or trying to buy, the high tech weaponry. Not
Assuming for his
necessarily,
Prowler fit.
not necessarily explicitly for himself, but you would, like, Occam's razor suggests that it is for him, and therefore it would be for Prowler stuff. But yeah, there is no confirmation. That being said, like, I am still not certain whether that reference to Miles was like a bit of a throwaway. Obviously, it was a wink and a nod, but I don't know if whenever Miles does make a live action debut, I'm still not convinced that it's going to be that Miles, because like if we're talking about like the PlayStation games of Spider-Man, Peter and Miles are just from the same place. Like, it's not like Miles dropped in from a different universe, as you typically see, or that Peter died and then Miles takes over, like in the Ultimate run. I don't know if they are going to have it like the video games, where it is Peter and Miles both coexisting as Spider-Man, and they're both from the same universe. Because, like, as you can probably deduce with a lot of the titles of films that have come out recently, Multiverse of Madness. I mean, multiverse is the whole thing nowadays, isn't it? Everybody's doing it. And obviously Marvel was probably one of the main culprits in kicking it off. So that's in play. So could Miles come in from a different place? Possibly. I don't know which direction they're going to take it yet.
I would argue not, because I don't think that there would be I feel like the fate of Prowler and Miles is very intertwined. And I think it would be interesting to not use the Miles of like this world, I guess. 616.
So you think he will come from somewhere else?
No, I'm saying I think he would come from this same
Oh,
place.
right with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also really hope that they do something more with Donald Glover because he's a brilliant actor and artist, and
You'd hope so. Yeah, it would be a very big missed opportunity if they didn't.
absolutely.
Particularly because of like even just his real world lineage and how he is basically almost single-handedly responsible for Miles becoming a character in the first place. Do you know this story?
I don't know that story.
When I'm going to butcher some of the facts, you can look it up, but as far as I can recall, this is going to be a bit hazy, so allow it if I make mistakes. But when the Amazing Spider-Man films were being made, like the casting was happening, obviously Andrew Garfield got the gig.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, Donald Glover, because he loves Spider-Man, was like petitioning to be Peter. Like he was going to, he might have even auditioned. I'm not sure. And there was a lot of buzz for him. Like a lot of people sort of rallied around the idea. Obviously, didn't end up happening. But then I can't remember what show it was, but like Donald Glover himself in that show wore a Spider-Man costume, and sort of like, you know, knowingly winking and nodding to the audience kind of bit.
That's probably
And
Community, if I had to guess.
that, I think that's right, but I didn't want to say it just in case it was wrong. And yeah, after that, again, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but whoever the comic writer was that created Miles Morales' character essentially said that the concept of Donald Glover as Spider-Man is one of, if not the main influencing factor in him creating Miles. Conceptually, you know, as this completely different take on, you know, redefining who and what Spider-Man could be, you know,
Yeah.
which has obviously been an unbridled success pretty much across the board. So, you know, at this point, when Homecoming came out, Miles still hadn't really exploded as he has nowadays, you know, with Spider-Verse
Right.
and stuff. Still popular as a character in the comics, and everybody knew the reference. But we all interpreted Donald Glover being there as like a knowing nod, you know, like who else could it be but Donald Glover? But yeah, like I think now, particularly with subsequent appearances in Spider-Verse, there are so many options, because is that version in Spider-Verse the same one we see in this film? We don't know.
Yeah.
Or is it just Donald Glover again getting to be Prowler as a knowing wink nod, actually getting to interact with a version of Miles in Spider-Verse? We don't know. But yes, hopefully they do something with him. That was a very long-winded story to tell, but an interesting one, I think.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
context.
Absolutely. And also I really did love their whole interaction, especially hey, just like some advice, like you need to be better at this. I thought that whole thing was really fun.
I'm
It
not
was
a
a good time.
girl. I'm a boy. I'm a man.
Yep. It was really good. It was a good moment. I will say one of the things that I kind of noticed with the film, like overall story, is it feels like a lot of this film is just smaller moments rather than like a bigger overall story. There is a bigger overall story, but I feel like this film is more just made up of like Spider-Man moments rather than like the overall story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
I think that could be down to, I mean, it is obviously like a choice at some point. But I think as well, like an interesting contextual factor to keep in mind is that this is the first film that we've seen that serves as the first standalone for a character that we've already been introduced to elsewhere.
Yeah.
So like the debut of every other hero we've seen, they had their first film where it was them and it was us getting to know them. Whereas we met Peter in Civil War. And so this film tries to be more grounded and have the smaller moments so that it's not like world ending like most of these films sort of fall into the trap of being. But also I think that they were trying as desperately as they could to establish his little corner of the universe while still keeping the overall narrative train running for everything that these films are building towards.
Yeah.
So they had a lot to juggle. That's
Yeah,
not a
absolutely.
defense, but could be a justification for why they have so many interspersed little bits with lots of different characters. So it's like, remember this person, make sure you remember this person, remember this person. Oh, we keep saying this person's name and we get what this person is like and their personality, so that we sort of feel a bit more acquainted with everything that revolves around Peter in this iteration as fast as possible.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, one thing I do want to make sure that we cover is the relationship that's starting. I mean, it's already started, but like developing between Iron Man and Spider-Man, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um I think that Tony Stark is doing his best to be a mentor and is just doing terribly at it.
Good old Tony.
Um and I will say I did get like I something I heard recently is if you get mad at the characters, it means the writing was good. If you get mad at like the story, then it means like the writing was bad kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the writing itself was good, like, but I was very mad at Tony for this whole film because I was like, dude, like you're expecting him to just like disappear, but you know he's like got like superhero powers, but you like just don't want to deal with him. And
Well,
he's
and
like
also
offering them like no guidance, like nothing. Like he's just like this kid.
I think it's also that he's scared. You know, Tony hasn't really had that kind of responsibility before.
Right.
And he's the one that drug Peter Parker into all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So he has that kind of innate responsibility. And you know, when Tony confronts him, it's like, you know, if anything happens to you, that's on me.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't want that on his conscience, which is like, that's a very dickish way of saying it, but the intent behind it is actually quite well intentioned.
Yeah.
It's just that he is completely inexperienced in being compassionate to a lot of people, or to anyone really, outside
Yeah.
of Pepper. So yeah, but like, I think he serves a purpose, and you know the line he says where it's, you know, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it.
He's nothing
That's
without the suit. Just saying.
no, but that's a lesson that Tony
That's not
learnt
100% true.
himself.
But
You know,
yeah.
like that was the whole point of Iron Man 3. It's like he was so obsessed with just being Iron Man, and it sort of, the entire point of Spider-Man and the reason that he is so beloved is because it's the dynamic, the push and pull between, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. So he has superpowers. he should use them to help people where he can, but also real life is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's dismissing his responsibilities at school all the way throughout this film, and you know what's the balance? Should one be to the detriment of the other, that kind of thing. And Tony has sort of found a bit of a better balance. Nobody can ever get it perfect. And Peter Parker being a struggling sort of high school, college student is something that pretty much everybody on the planet can relate to in one way or another. So I think that, like me saying, they didn't do Uncle Ben, they didn't do MJ falling in love immediately to avoid the stereotypes. I still think that they did that, but they also at the same time managed to hit the thematic core of what makes Spider-Man an interesting and unique and beloved character.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something. Okay, so I wanted to ask you just because I feel like I need to pick your brain, and I know I can Google stuff, but sometimes it's easier to just ask somebody that has the knowledge already. Okay, so he has to make the web fluid. We see that in the film. We see him reload the little cartridges. Point blank period. He has to make the web fluid. So how is he sticking to the wall?
Because he got bit by the spider.
Okay. And so that's like the spider powers versus
so
the web fluid, which isn't part of the spider powers.
No, because the whole web shooters is Peter being a genius, quote unquote, you know, like a very clever kid who can make tech. And it just so happens that because he was bit by a spider and has not only the stickiness so that he can crawl on walls and stuff, but has the spider sense, you know, that it's not really demonstrated in this film too much, but Spider-Man in general has
the spidey senses,
you know, where he can sense like a punch coming from behind him or something, that he then themed himself around Spider,
which is why it's web fluid and not just some random other substance.
So that's why he's got, you know, the webbing pattern all over the suit, why he calls himself Spider-Man, obviously, and then why he has webs that he shoots.
Okay, so then what is the things covered by like his powers in this universe then?
Sorry, explain a little bit more.
So like what are his powers specifically granted by the spider? So sticking to things, I
can crawl on walls, heightened reflexes, which is spider sense.
And then like more strength?
Yeah, like a little bit of enhanced strength and stamina.
And that's it?
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that that's not, it's not that it's nothing. It's just, okay. So then in the Spider-Verse films, does Miles have the car? No, he doesn't, right? Like, because you have that whole thing where he gets like stuck. So he makes the fluid in his own body, question mark.
No. Miles has web shooters.
He does?
Yeah, because because when they're escaping in the first film, when they're escaping the Oscorp lab, Peter has to give him one of his web shooters when he's training him.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a suspension of disbelief that at random points throughout the high stakes action moments, they refill web fluid.
Sure. Okay.
That gets difficult because then in the Sam Raimi films with Tobey Maguire, he actually was organic and he produced the webs inside himself. But that's the only iteration of Spider-Man, cinematic wise, that can do that. Everybody else has to make their own web fluid.
That's simultaneously gross and cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you for answering my questions.
Sure.
I feel like I had to I don't know why, but I feel like I needed the outline of like what was covered under the Spider-Man umbrella, because it just feels like such a wide umbrella sometimes.
And obviously, like, it's not power, but Peter is very intelligent as well. So
Right.
that's like technically something you would include in that list, but it's not
Right.
because of the spider bite or anything. He
It's
wasn't like
just
a
his
dumbass before he
character.
got bitten. He's like, oh, well. It's just who he is. So
Okay.
something I will say, because I don't know that you would touch on it because you don't have the context. One of the, if not the main criticism lobbied against Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man, which you could retrospectively see in this film alone, let alone subsequent films, is that he essentially is treated as Iron Man Jr. as opposed to Spider-Man explicitly. They set up the dynamic between him and Tony. His suit is made by Tony. He's given it in Civil War, and then Peter gets to keep it. So like all of like the tech stuff that Peter has is provided by Tony. Tony is the mentor. So he, again, part of the endearing and beloved thing about Spider-Man is that he's a self-made hero and he's struggling to do it all by himself. There are elements of that in this, but he doesn't have to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he still has that massive helping hand and ultimately like a safety blanket to fall back on with Tony, which other iterations of the character haven't had. And I won't go into specifics or spoilers, but that is a problem that exacerbates over time. Like that relationship between him and Tony does not go away; it strengthens. And there are some people that, including myself, who kind of wish that Peter was fully just this bumbling school kid who had a suit that he made himself that maybe didn't look as high, that certainly wasn't as high tech and flashy as this one. Yeah, I think that is a criticism that, whilst there isn't necessarily like a massive discussion to be had, I think just in terms of context for people listening, it might be worth letting people know that is a thing. Because you might have just inherently picked up on that as time's gone on in subsequent appearances. Like, it is very hard with this MCU iteration to detach Peter Parker from Tony. And I think that is kind of to the detriment of both characters.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thus far, obviously I haven't seen everything. Thus far, I've enjoyed their relationship. I think that the whole like suit thing, I think it saves him a lot of time, and I think that that's okay. I do definitely know what you mean, where it's like it would have been cool to see him like kind of figure things out himself.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also not too upset about it. Not too worried about it.
Because you do still see the suit that he made himself in this film, when the high-tech one is stripped away. But yeah, like, what if there was a version of this film where he had that suit stripped away, still got to wear that homemade type suit, but then learning off of that lesson from Tony, made his own version of the suit,
Yeah.
that was kind of an in-between point, but we didn't quite get that, and it just went to, which worked, the idea that he then earned that suit back. But yeah, I think that the criticisms are well founded. It doesn't bother me that much, but I think it is still something worth noting.
Fair enough. I do like that how they addressed like how it's so tight on his body because it's like nobody would realistically be able to get something this tight on this quickly.
Yeah.
Like you'd need like a bunch of lube or something.
That's not a picture I need in my head.
Anyways, I'm glad that they addressed that because that was one of my main concerns with Spider-Man, honestly.
Your main concern.
Yeah, like how are they getting this on? I'm just kidding. No, I did like how they addressed it though. I want to point out, just because I really enjoy when stories do this, not just like TV shows, movies, whatever. I really enjoy like in general, just because it's way more realistic to life. That the person that he had a crush on, like he is not the one that he ends up with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we don't see this happen often in superhero movies in particular, where it's like the reward of the superhero is they get the girl, they get the guy, whatever. Like that's the reward, kind of,
Yeah.
which is feels weird. But that wasn't necessarily like what happened here, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that Liz's character was really good, and well put together and thought out. Um, I do like how I enjoy how their relationship develops, where she's like, like it's obvious that you have a crush on me. I like you. They go to the dance, things don't work out, like that whole thing. Um, it's very, very, very common in stories that whoever the romantic, even if even if there is more than one love interest, typically the love interest you meet first is the one that the character ends up with. This happens a lot in stories, a lot, a lot. And I don't enjoy it all the time. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm like, oh, they're destined to be together. But I just read a lot of romance, like not just like romance novels, but like romance and fantasy books and stuff like that. So wanted to point it out because I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to say about any of the characters? I know we haven't specifically talked about Peter Parker too much, besides like him just being kind of like a silly, bumbling idiot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there is much to say about him really. Like Tom Holland is playing a quintessential version of Peter Parker, which is like, for most people, they know exactly what that means. They know exactly what they're going to get, and Tom Holland does it well. At this stage where they are again kind of like laying the groundwork without doing an origin, they don't really go that much further beyond it. So I think that anybody listening already knows what we could say about his character in this film at the very least. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't
Well,
really
fair enough. I think like one thing I did kind of want to specifically cover, and it's not necessarily like his character, but the way that like his character develops alongside the character of the Vulture, I thought was a really interesting story arc where you kind of see this dude that's like just trying to make a living, and he even talks to him towards the end like, hey, like you and I, like we need to do everything we can to survive. Like we're not these like huge rich companies, people, all that stuff. But like I really did enjoy the way that like those two characters kind of developed side by side, and I think it was much more apparent because a lot of the villains thus far have been so throwaway and their motives have been so like I'm evil kind of thing. And just to kind of see like the character, because you see him super like early on in the film, right? Like he finds this technology, everything gets taken from him. He's able to kind of save things, put his life back together, do all this work for his, wife and daughter, all of that stuff. And you kind of see like Peter Parker develop as well, like into his roles. It's almost like feels like natural, like fate kind of falling upon them. And I enjoyed the way that their characters kind of developed and their conversations, like even as they were fighting and, like him
Yeah.
saving Vulture at the end, all of that stuff. I enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Vulture is, I'm kind of segueing into talking about Vulture a little bit, but he is one of the, again, not necessarily complex villains, but one of the better executed villains. Not only in terms of like a decent motivation, justification on multiple fronts. At the start of the film, you see that he is or was working on cleaning up what happened during the Avengers, cleaning up New York. And then because Tony's company, Damage Control, came in and took that work away, he had to go underground to continue to make money. And by doing so, he then kind of built up a reputation as not a super villain, but as like a criminal, and built up a bit of a persona around that. And yeah, like, I mean, you said it at the top, but the reveal of him being Liz's dad is still to this day talked about as one of like the biggest surprise moments in the entire franchise. Because like nobody saw it coming. And the way in which that subsequent scene is played out and acted across the board is like just chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did actually want to specifically bring that up, and I think it's probably just shows how good, like in my opinion, that Tom Holland is at acting. I feel like I could almost feel the emotions of like his panic and that hot anxiety panic that would kind of take over your body of like seeing this person not knowing what to do, because it's like you can't do anything because then you'll reveal yourself as Spider-Man, obviously, but you're in a really uncomfortable situation where you're like, I don't know if he knows who I am, like stuff like that. Like you could see all of that panic kind of play out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so well acted. The other moment that I thought was like extremely well acted was when he gets stuck under the rubble. I feel like I could feel the panic of like being stuck under like so much like literal weight.
Which
and,
is
like
and that
freaking out.
scene is a direct rip out of probably one of the most famous Spider-Man comic panels.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you could Google like Spider-Man rubble, and it's practically that exact scene where he's trapped between underneath a huge amount of debris, and he's kind of having to, ramp himself up, telling himself that he's Spider-Man and that he can do this to get out. And they do it very well, with the sort of half reflection in the water with the mask. That's another very famous, iconic Spider-Man image. So yeah, again, like I say, they avoid a lot of the stereotypes of stuff that we've already seen, but they hit the thematic and key moments of a quintessential Spider-Man story here, which is what makes it just a very good film overall.
Have you we're about to go on a tangent and I apologize. Have you seen have you seen the live action Peter Pan film from the early 2000s?
Yes.
Where they're like, I do believe in fairies. That scene has the same energy as the Stuck Under the Rubble scene where he's like, yeah, I'm Spider-Man.
I don't think it does.
In a good way. I love the Peter Pan film.
Because partway through that I do believe in fairies scene, I'm pretty sure people start singing I do believe in fairies.
They don't sing it, they're just chanting.
What? No. I think you'll find that at least in one of the cutaways to one of the other characters, it might have been the maid in the house back in London, but I think she starts singing.
Sure. I don't remember that part, but yeah, no, it's just, I really do love that moment where he's like, come on, Spider-Man, and he's like hyping himself up, but they did like remind me energy wise of each other.
If you say so.
I told you we were going to go on a tangent adventure.
The one stylistic thing I will point out, that I will give credit to John Watts, the director, and whoever was like the DP and cinematographer, is when they're in the car on the way to the homecoming dance, and Vulture starts to clock that Peter is Spider-Man. They do a very interesting thing with color. Most of the time, or at least when the realization happens, they're at a stoplight. And in the shots where it's on Peter, it's red, like the red is very visible. And then I can't remember exactly what the line is, but Vulture turns around and looks at Peter, and they're talking about Spider-Man, I think, because Liz brings up how Spider-Man
he's
was
like,
always
oh,
there.
it's so
But
lucky that he was there.
That's it. And that Peter, he always disappeared for some reason. And Vulture looks around and looks at Peter. He's like, "Oh, thanks to good old Spider-Man." And sort of, it's at that point you realize that he knows, and he gives it like a knowing smile, glaringly at Peter. But as that happens, the light turns green and flashes green on Vulture's face. So, it's the idea that not only is the red symptomatic of Spider-Man and the green of Vulture, but also that Peter is doing everything he can to make sure that he's not found out. Red, like stop. And as soon as Vulture makes the connection, it's like, it's go time, metaphorically and literally, which is, I think, the one thing that I will credit the behind the camera people on in this film.
Yeah, it was really well done. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you wanted to say about the overall story, the through line of the story, or any of the characters?
Again, like, I sound like a broken record, but the idea of quintessential Spider-Man, they do get across the concept of with great power comes great responsibility without actually saying it.
Yeah.
The whole idea of like earning the suit, and if you aren't anything without the suit, you shouldn't have it, that kind of thing. It's the same sentiment, just done in a slightly different way, which is good. We don't just need a repetition of what happened with Toby and Andrew. The only other thing that I think is worth noting that we haven't talked about is that Stark Tower has been sold. Happy was moving everything out and it was being sold, so it's no longer obviously we know from other stuff that it's not the Avengers headquarters anymore, because that's been moved upstate, but yeah, they've sold the tower.
Yeah, I think it's probably a smart choice, probably for the better.
Yeah, I mean, it probably it probably catch some bad PR if they kept working out of that building, given everything that happened.
Yeah. Okay, question for you.
Yeah.
Where does this rank? Do you want me to read your top 5 or lower than top 5?
Just start with the top 5, but just keep reading and then I'll tell you to stop.
Okay, Captain America Civil War, Guardians Volume 2, Winter Soldier, Age of Ultron, Doctor Strange, Avengers, like the first one, Guardians of the Galaxy, then Thor.
Put it between those two.
Between Avengers and Guardians?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's a very good film, as we've both said, but I just think that for me, everything above that does something wholly unique or interesting that this film just doesn't quite do. And like I've said this before, but we're gonna run into this problem with ranking a lot. Like a lot of the films going forward are pretty consistent, in my opinion, in terms of quality, but it's just subjective preference, and also does X film do something a bit more interesting or compelling than Y? That's why this might seem low, and I guess it is for a film of this quality, but that's the justification I give.
Fair enough. Any guesses on where I put it, like top 5 or not?
I would imagine it's probably your top 5 somewhere.
Okay, so my top 5 currently: Doctor Strange Volume 2, Volume 1, Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Ant-Man, and then Civil War.
Ooh, I'm going to guess. You spoke pretty highly of all of those. I'm going to wager it's 5, and it's bump Civil War out.
That's correct. You're
Is it
dead on.
actually?
Yeah, you're dead on.
I was like, well, she said she really loved Ant-Man, so I don't know that I can place it above Ant-Man. So there you go.
Yeah, that was also the thing that got me. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Ant-Man was so funny.
Yeah.
I do think that like this, for all like the little bits and pieces, I felt like this movie had a pretty good story arc overall. So I think that's kind of
For sure.
what saved it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, um we do not have anybody to add to the simplest. We're at 3 people right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that covers everything.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks everybody for taking the time to hang out with us today. Special shout out to our current patrons. We have Bucky Blue, Amon, Fabulous Brianna, Brianna's mom, Brianna's brother, Brianna's wife, Nikolai at Night, Cypher Primus, Brendan Myers, Marcus O'Neill, Lillian, Mimi J, The Snack Network, David Hotwright, Dave Harp, the Xbox Expansion Pass, Alpaca Tom, and Lee Navarro. Where can people find you?
People can find me anywhere and everywhere at Sam Heaney, Heaney.
Perfect. You can find me at Fabulous Brianna, FabulastBreanna. And again, thanks for hanging out with us. We will see you in 2 weeks with what's the next one?
Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, wow. What a jump. What a jump in tone. Okay. Whiplash.
Hey, I don't think you're ready.
I don't think I am either. Is this going to be a terrible Thor film or is this a good Thor film?
Why would I say now? I
All
just
I have to
think
do is
I
Google
just
Thor
think
Ragnarok
yeah,
to see what the
I would
score
say
is.
don't. For this film in particular, don't look it up beforehand. Just
Ugh.
go to it when you decide to watch it, press play. Because I think every single preconception you currently might have is completely wrong. I'm not going to say in which
Listen,
direction.
all I'm saying is last time we watched a Thor movie, it didn't
Was
go well.
no, it didn't.
Yeah. Those are my concerns.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.